Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us here today at Lincoln's Inn for our InnSight session. First, introductions. Hello, I'm Beth Williams. I'm the Inn's Outreach Coordinator, so I'll be talking to you a bit today about what you can expect from training for the bar, all the different hoops you have to jump through, a little bit of the practicalities, like how do you fund it, and a little bit more about what the Inn does and how we fit into your future life as a barrister, if you choose that to be your future career. We will then have a little break after about an hour, and then we'll be joined by one of our members, Jack Meek, who is an employed barrister. He'll be here to answer any questions you might have about life at the bar. Thank you to all the online attendees who've joined us. If you have any tech issues, please do pop it in the chat on Zoom. We will do our best to fix it, but we are not miracle workers, so be patient with us. The recording of this session will also be available after the event, so you'll be able to watch it back afterwards. Online attendees, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A function and we will get to them hopefully when Jack is here. And in-person attendees, we will be running around the audience with a microphone to take questions as well. So without any further ado, we'll get on with things. So welcome to Lincoln's Inn. We are one of the 4 Inns of Court. So the 4 Inns are Gray's Inn, Lincoln's Inn, Middle Temple and Inner Temple. We all do the same basic function. So the Inns of Court are professional associations for barristers and judges in England and Wales. In order to become a barrister in England and Wales, you have to become a member of one of the Inns of Court. If you guys want to come down and sit in the main seating, the view's not very good from there. You won't be able to see the screen very well. So in order to become a barrister in England and Wales, you have to become a member of one of the Inns of Court. We are the only organisations that have the power to call people to the bar. So we get to say, well done, congratulations, you are officially a barrister. And we also have an ongoing relationship with our members throughout their professional life. We have a supervisory function. So if anyone is caught misbehaving, we have a duty to step in and regulate that. And we also maintain various facilities for our membership, like our education facilities, our gardens, our library, and we also have a chapel as well. Outside of what we do for our membership, we also are private landlords. A lot of chambers rent space from us, and we're also a very popular filming destination and a wedding venue as well, which is nice. So yeah, we do lots of different things. So a little bit on Lincoln's Inn. We hope we are suitably grand. This is our great hall. It was built in 1845, and this is where members can have lunch. So if you join Lincoln's Inn, you have the right to have lunch at your inn 5 days a week. And it's also where we host Call to the Bar. This is our lecture theatre. So for those of you in person, you can see you are in it. For those online, this is our purpose-built education theatre, which we use for our qualifying sessions, which I'll talk a little bit more about later on. We have a library, very important that we all keep, that all 4 Inns of Court keep a law library. And as a member of an Inn of Court, you can use any of the 4 Inns libraries. We share and share alike. I should say, we're not in competition with the other Inns. We all get on very well. We all like each other. So whichever Inn you pick, if you do decide to become a barrister, you can't make a wrong choice. Apologies, that's my phone, very bad. And finally, we have a chapel. All the Inns have a church or chapel attached. This dates back to the time when we offered everything for our members. So our members would live at the Inn. So we would offer them somewhere to eat, somewhere to live, somewhere to worship. Nowadays, you are welcome to use the chapel as you wish, but no obligation. And we also use it for our members of other faith and no faith. So we hold regular meditation sessions in the chapel, and we also loan it out to students of the Royal College of Music as a concert venue too. So it's open to all. You are welcome to come along if you fancy being serenaded one lunchtime. And finally, at Lincoln's Inn, we have a little backup hall. We have our old hall just in case our great hall is out of use for any reason. It's the oldest part of the inn still standing. So how do you become a barrister? First off, you need to complete the academic stage of training. For most people, this is a qualifying law degree, so a law degree in England or Wales, or an English law degree at a Scottish or Irish university. If you aren't studying law or your law degree is not a qualifying law degree, then you'll then have to do another set of training, which is the law conversion course, also known as a GDL or a graduate diploma in law. And once you've done that, that's your academic stage ticked off, and you will then move on to your bar course. Bar course is not particularly affordable, so I would strongly recommend looking into scholarships to help fund that. I will talk a little bit more about scholarships in a bit. You do have to think quite far in advance if you want to get a scholarship to help fund your bar course. The most generous scholarships available are offered by the 4 Inns of Court, and you have to apply for them 12 to 16 months before you start your bar course. So if you intend to start your bar course in September 2024, you would apply this coming September 2023. Once you've got all your arrangements for your bar course, you've worked out how you're going to fund it, you've applied to a bar course provider, and you've got all that set up, you also need to join one of the 4 Inns of Court. You need to do this a minimum of 12 weeks before you start your bar course. And you also have to complete one other little task before you start, which is passing your bar course aptitude test, also known as the BCAT. They love an acronym at the bar, so I will try and translate those into actual English for everyone as we go through today. The BCAT is a multiple choice test. You can find an example of that online on the Bar Standards Board website, so you can give it a practice just to calm any nerves, make sure you know what you're doing. And you can then book in your sitting with the Bar Standards Board. For the BCAT, once you pass, it's valid for 5 years. So I would recommend doing your BCAT sooner rather than later. The closer you get to September and the start of the majority of bar courses, the more booked up the BCAT sittings get. So you don't want to leave it to the last minute, because you may not be able to get a chance to sit the exam prior to starting your bar course, and you may have to postpone your bar studies for a little bit because of that. So don't put it off, get that one ticked off in plenty of time. You can also resit it if you fail, so it's always worth just building in a little bit of wiggle room just in case. And then finally, you actually do your bar course, and simultaneously to that, you do 10 qualifying sessions with your Inn of Court. So your bar course is normally a 1-year course, occasionally a 2-year part-time, or there are also flexible options available, which I'll talk about in a moment. And simultaneously to that, you do 10 qualifying sessions. So you do 2 lots of training parallel with each other. The qualifying sessions are done with your Inn of Court. And once you've passed all your bar course exams and assessments and done your 10 qualifying sessions, you can be called to the bar. Called to the bar is like your graduation ceremony. That means, well done, officially you have become a barrister, congratulations. However, you cannot technically use the term barrister in a professional context and take on clients until you complete the final stage of training, which is pupillage. This is 1 year to 18 months work experience shadowing a barrister. And that's the final stage of training. And then you really have genuinely done it and got to the end. So the majority of your training is your bar course. There are currently 10 bar course providers around the country, and they have 19 different locations between them. Some bar course providers are exclusively only in one place. For example, the University of Cardiff is the only bar course provider in Wales. So if you want to study in Wales, Cardiff is the provider for you. Alternatively, somewhere like the University of Law has multiple locations around the country, so you can have a bit of choice on that. All the bar course providers offer the course slightly differently. Some of them have slightly different timeframes on which they teach. Some of them cost different amounts. So it's worth looking into the bar course providers, getting an idea of what the differences and the idiosyncrasies are between the different bar course providers, and working out which one is best for you. The Bar Standards Board also publish statistics every year on how many of the students at each bar course provider pass the course. So it might be worth looking into that and seeing which provider has the best pass rate before you apply for a bar course provider. You have to apply to the bar course providers directly. After this event, I'll send you a little bit of follow-up information, which will include the IN's guide to becoming a barrister. On the last page of that, page 22, you will find a list of all of the bar course providers and their websites, so you can look into them. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but it is worth doing a little bit of research off your own back, and you will have to apply to them directly for your course. So pick which bar course provider you like the look of first, and then apply. So the bar course is mostly offered as a 3-step pathway. This is your academic stage of training, so your law degree or non-law and a graduate diploma in law. Your bar course is a single qualification over the course of 1 year or 2 years part-time. And then finally, your pupillage or work-based component. There is an additional flexible option for completing your bar course. This is the 4-step pathway. This is where you do your academic stage, so law degree and GDL. And then your bar course is separated into 2 different qualifications, your bar course part 1 and your bar course part 2. Currently, I believe 3 of the bar course providers offer the 2-part program, and they tend to be a little bit more affordable. The first part of the program tends to be much less of a financial outlay for you. And if you do not pass your exams or decide after the first part that being a barrister isn't actually for you, you can step away from the training without having lost as much as if you've invested in the traditional bar course program, which is 1 qualification. So that one's got a little bit more flexibility built into it. You can also space out the learning a little bit, so it might be easier to fit around other commitments in your life as well. And then finally, your pupillage or work-based component. If any of you are looking very early, if any of you are yet to do a degree, which I know sometimes we do get at events like this, there is the integrated degree and bar course pathway. This is offered by the University of Northumbria, and it's where you can do your law degree and the bar course as 1 qualification at the same institution. And there is hopefully going to be an apprenticeship pathway open up in the future. The Bar Standards Board are in the process of developing that, and that will allow students to do their degree, their bar course and their pupillage as a single apprenticeship, but that is yet to be introduced, so watch this space. So how do you fund it? You might have noticed that the bar course price varies from £11,750 to over £19,000, which sounds absolutely terrifying when you put it like that, but there are scholarships available for you. The Inns of Court offers scholarships for the bar course and the GDL. So if any of you are considering doing a graduate diploma in law, so if you're not studying law at university and you intend to do a 1-year conversion after this, then this is the right time to be thinking about it. Our GDL scholarships are open this week, I believe, last Friday in March, and close first Friday in May. So you have all of April to make an application for a GDL scholarship. All of the Inns of Court open their scholarships at the same time of year. So all 4 Inns will have their GDL scholarships open at the moment. It is the most complete form of funding you can get to assist with your studies. We also offer scholarships for the bar course. So at Lincoln's Inn, we offer about 100 bar course scholarships every year. We get on average between 300 and 400 applications. So you have a 1 in 3 to a 1 in 4 chance of getting a scholarship from Lincoln's Inn. The other ends have similar odds on their bar course scholarships. And all scholarships are means tested. What this means is you will get given a name for your scholarship. You might notice if you've looked up some barristers on their chambers profile, they sometimes say that they're a Mary McMurray scholar or a Denning scholar. That means they got awarded a scholarship from an Inn of Court. The name for their scholarship is awarded on merit. So at Lincoln's Inn, we have 3 stages of merit for the scholarships: the Lord Mansfield, the major scholarships, and the minor scholarships. but the amount of funding you receive is entirely based on personal circumstances. So that's confidential between you and your inn. We take some financial information from you, run a means test, work out how much funding you realistically need to complete your bar course, and offer you a scholarship amount based on that need. So how much you receive will depend on if you have regular mortgage or rent payments, if you have anyone dependent on you, if you have any assistance from friends and family, if you have savings, etc. So yeah, it's difficult to give a ballpark on what you might expect from a scholarship from an Inn of Court, but it is based on what you realistically need to complete your studies. Scholars at Lincoln's Inn also get a few additional benefits. So you get free admission to the inn. You get reduced rates for your qualifying sessions. So ordinarily students pay a little bit towards their qualifying sessions. We don't make any money out of the qualifying sessions. It's mostly to make sure that people actually turn up. So there is a financial forfeit if you don't show. And you also get free call to the bar if you're a scholar at the inn. You can also join the Denning Society, which is a society at Lincoln's Inn exclusively for our scholars. And at Lincoln's Inn, we also offer accommodation to 14 scholars every year. Gray's Inn also offer residential scholarships. So if you're thinking about doing your bar course in London and need somewhere to live, it might be worth looking into Lincoln's and Gray's, because we do offer you the chance to live at the inn. If you've walked around the grounds, you'll know that's a pretty good deal. It's very beautiful. But Middle and Inner Temple, unfortunately, don't have residential scholarships. So it's Gray's or Lincoln's if you want to live at your inn. So what are we actually looking for in scholars? What should you be showcasing? We split it into 4 basic categories. Firstly, intellect. This is normally demonstrated most easily through your academic achievements. If you have a first or a 2-1 at university, then you're in a solid position for moving on to the bar. If you have a 2-2, it doesn't automatically discount you, but you will have to show extraordinary qualities in other areas to make up for that less outstanding degree result. And if you have a 3rd, you are very, very, very unlikely to make it at the bar. So just be realistic when it comes to moving on to the next stage of training and when it comes to your degree result as well. Motivation, sometimes this is called passion for the bar. This is your barrister specific experience, why you want to come to the bar, why you wanted to study law, why you want to be a barrister rather than a solicitor, and also any barrister specific work experience you've got. If you've done many pupilages, if you shadowed a barrister, if you've had a chance to do marshalling, mooting, debating, that kind of thing, that will all work towards demonstrating your intent to be a barrister and your enthusiasm for that pathway. Personal characteristics. People don't always realize how important it is for a barrister to have decent people skills. You will be dealing with a wide variety of people if you decide on the barrister route. You will need to be able to talk to a jury. You will need to be able to talk to a judge. You will need to be able to have a relationship with your client and your solicitor client as well. If you go into certain areas of the law, you might be dealing with clients who are going through the worst things they've ever been through in their lives. They might be emotionally distressed, they might be going through a divorce, going through a custody hearing for their children, they might be accused of a crime. You need to be able to manage that client successfully and keep a professional relationship with them. So people skills is really important. You'd be surprised how you might have been developing those skills throughout your life. If you've ever pulled pints in a pub and had to deal with drunks, you will have people skills in spades. So don't think all your experience has to be all law related all the time. You have transferable skills that will also set you up for your future as a barrister. And finally, communication. Will you be a good advocate? Can you talk to people? Can you convey an argument clearly, concisely, understandably? Can you be a good written advocate as well? So your written application, how well is it structured? Have you made all the relevant points? Have you spelt everything correctly? Is it properly punctuated? Might seem very obvious things, but you'd be surprised how often these get overlooked when people make their applications. Also, if you are applying for one of the other ends, Middle Temple and Inner Temple guarantee an interview to all applicants for scholarship. But that does not mean that they do not take into account your written application. You still need to make sure that written application is as good as possible. So don't think because you're guaranteed an interview that your written application can just be, you know, chuck it off in a minute. It doesn't really matter. They will take it into account. So make sure you've checked and double checked it. So applicants can only apply to one Inn of Court for a scholarship. So although our scholarships are all open at the same time of year, you have to pick which inn you would like to apply for before making your application. So coming to events like this, having a little scout out of the inns and getting to know us a little bit is a really good way to help you pick which inn is right for you. You do not need to be a member of an inn before you make an application, and we generally actually recommend that you wait before joining an inn, partly because you don't have to pay your membership fee if you're a scholar, so it just eases that financial burden a bit. If you do join an inn before you apply for a scholarship and then become a scholar, you will get refunded your membership fee. But it also means you can go along to some of the events and the opportunities that are open to non-members of the other inns before you pick which one to apply for. So it gives you a little bit of flexibility, a little bit of wiggle room to have a taste of what all the 4 inns are like before you select which one you want to apply to. If you're making a scholarship application, you will need at least 2 references to go with your application. These can be academic, they can be professional, and they can be character references as well. If you are straight out of university, we will expect at least one of them to be an academic reference. If you intend to do your bar course part-time, then you can apply for either year of your course. So if you're starting the bar course this coming September, you've missed the chance to apply for a scholarship for that first year, but if you're doing it part-time, you could apply for a scholarship to help support you in the second year of your bar course. And finally, if you are an international scholarship, you are perfectly eligible to apply for a scholarship. You just have to declare an intent to practice in England and Wales. And the way you do that is you say, I intend to practice in England and Wales. Like a lot of things at the bar, it works on an honours system. So yeah, we do trust you when you say that that is your intention. At Lincoln's Inn, GDL scholars are not guaranteed an interview or a scholarship for the bar course. With Gray's Inn, you are guaranteed an interview if you get a GDL scholarship for a bar course scholarship. And at Inner Temple, I'm not sure if they still do, but they used to guarantee you a bar course scholarship if you get a GDL scholarship. So it might be worth having a little look into those if you are going on to the GDL. I'm not trying to do down Lincoln's. We're great. Do apply for us if you would like, if you like us. But I like to try and be fair to my colleagues as well and make it clear that there's lots of options out there. So the biggest interaction you will have with your Inn of Court is your qualifying sessions. This is the obligatory training that you have to complete with us. All your qualifying sessions will fit into one of 5 categories. They are ethics, standards and values, advocacy skills, legal knowledge and the rule of law, equality, diversity and inclusion, and management of pupillage and career development and well-being. Bit of a mouthful, that last one. You have to do at least one in each of the 5 categories, and you have to complete 10 in total. Mostly these are scheduled for the evenings and weekends, so regardless of what your bar course provider's timetable is, you should be able to fit your qualifying sessions around that schedule, as well as your other commitments in your life. And they are normally lectures or interactive workshops. At Lincoln's Inn, our lectures are held here in person at the inn, and they're also streamed virtually online, so you have some flexibility about how you attend and how you complete your studies. And we also hold in-person events around the country near to the other bar course providers. So for example, if you're studying with Northumbria, we don't expect you to come down to London to do your qualifying sessions. There will be options for you to complete them nearer to your provider. So they tend to be a variety of types, mostly lectures. There will not be any assessments for your qualifying sessions. So you do not have to write us essays. You do not have to sit exams with us. That is all done with your bar course provider. But for the qualifying sessions, there are some minimum requirements we expect of you. Turn up on time, pay attention. We will notice if you have a nap, stay for the whole thing. And if there's any advanced preparation, that you do the reading beforehand, and we will know if you haven't. So just make sure you've had a look over, read all the information that's been sent to you before you attend your qualifying sessions. It doesn't matter so much if you're terrible. It's your chance to give it a go and get advice from a barrister on where you're going wrong, and to deepen your knowledge for your future before you have clients depending on you. So there are a few additional supports that are available once you're a member of an Inn. For pupillage, you will get a pupillage grant from your chambers or your other approved training organisation, but certain areas of the law tend to pay slightly less well than others. I'm sure you're very aware that family and crime tend to be less well paid areas of work than, say, the commercial bar. If you are on a lower pupillage salary, we can offer a pupillage grant to you through your Inn of Court. We at Lincoln's also have a handful of European scholarships that are exclusive to us. So we send scholars to the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg, the International Criminal Court in The Hague, and we also administer a scholarship for the European Free Trade Association in EFTA as well. We send one scholar every year, and they are only open to members of Lincoln's Inn. So if you're interested in international and human rights law, might be the Inn for you. The EFTA scholarship is open to members of any Inn. It's only the scholarships to the European Court of Human Rights and the ICC that are exclusively for Lincoln's Inn members. And we also have a fund called the Overseas Placement Fund, which helps financially support students who've set up their own work experience abroad. So we've had students do a lot of different things. We've had students work for Amicus in America who work on death row cases. We've had a lot of students go to the Women's Legal Centre in Cape Town in South Africa. We've had one student go to work for refugees in Gaza recently. So there's a lot of opportunities there to get a little bit of varied experience. And finally, we have a handful of prizes and awards for our student members throughout the year. The students who score in the highest percentile on the bar course get a Buchanan Award of £100. The highest scoring student every year gets a wig and gown from Eden Ravenscroft. That may not sound like much, but those wigs are extraordinarily expensive, so it is well worth winning. And we have a variety of competitions and prizes that we run throughout the year as well. As well as our qualifying sessions, we have additional activities that you can get involved with. So we have several competitions, including the Eric Crowther Shield and the Gluckstein Prize. I can't remember, is it the Gluckstein Prize where you defend a fictional character?
It's the Crowther.
I always get them the wrong way around. The Crowther Shield, you get to represent a fictional character in court, which is great fun. I think Goldilocks has been defended for breaking and entering in the past and things like that. We also have a mentoring and marshalling scheme. So mentoring, you can be matched with a mentor for the duration of your bar course. They will be a member of the Inn, and we try to match you on geographic location and area of interest. So if you're interested in a specific area of law, you can get matched with a mentor who works in that area to give you some insight and some help for your future. Marshalling is where you get to shadow a judge for 2 to 3 days in court. So we set that up for you as well, again, based on geographic location and area of legal interest. And finally, I'm not sure if the online attendees can see it. I think the Zoom link has just cut it off. But the last thing is we help you prepare for your pupillage applications as well. So we can give you one-to-one advice on your written application for pupillage. And we can also set up a mock interview for you if you get offered a pupillage interview to give you a practice before you actually get to the interview itself. And finally, when pandemics aren't stopping us from traveling, we also do trips to the European courts every year. So we take a group to the ICC in The Hague, the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg, and the Court of Justice of the European Union. I always forget that one. The CJEU, love an acronym, in Luxembourg as well. We used to do a scholarship to the CJEU as well. Unfortunately, that's currently on hiatus because we are no longer part of the Court of Justice of the European Union, but we hope to be able to match scholars with advocates general from different jurisdictions in the future. So, as a member of an Inn, what can you expect from us? Your membership is for life. Once you join an Inn and you've paid your admission fee, there is no additional fees for membership. It's not like you have to pay annually to remain a member of the Inn. You are a member of your Inn for life. There are only 2 exceptions to this. The first is after 5 years, if you've made no attempt to do your bar course or your qualifying sessions, then your membership elapses because we presume after 5 years, if you haven't become a barrister, then you don't intend to. And if you get disbarred, but you have to do something really terrible for that. So I'm sure that won't be relevant to anyone listening in today. You get to have lunch in hall as a member of an Inn, and you can also bring guests. So if you ever fancy showing off as a member of an Inn, you can bring some guests along to have lunch in the Great Hall. The food is very good. One thing about being a barrister, you'll never go hungry. There is always food. It's great. You get to use our members' common room. Nowadays, we call it the MCR restaurant and bar. They do lunch, dinner, cocktails, mocktails, afternoon tea, whatever you fancy. We also often do discounts in the MCR for students after student events. So we run a regular mooting and debating club, and there's always a discount in the MCR afterwards. We know it can be stressful training for the bar, so we like to encourage you to relax and enjoy yourself now and again, and chat to some of the barristers who are later in their stages of training and their profession as well. And you also have access to our library. As I mentioned, members of any Inn of Court can access all 4 of the Inn's libraries, and we also take it in turns to open our libraries on a Saturday. So you have access to a law library 6 days out of 7 in London, and you can also give us a ring or drop us an email if you need to get hold of a digital copy of something and you're outside of London. So what can you be doing before you become a member of an Inn? So there's a few things. At Lincoln's Inn, we offer the Neuberger Prize. This is for students from non-Russell Group universities who are in their 2nd year of their degree. It is a very exclusive prize. You have to be nominated by your university to apply for it, and we are taking applications at the moment. So if you are a student at a non-Russell Group university and you're interested in the Neuberger Prize, take a look at it online and approach your law faculty and ask if you can be nominated to apply. We also have the mini pupillage grant scheme. So if you can get work experience in the form of a mini pupillage, that is really invaluable experience. So do look into chambers and apply for a mini. If you're worried that you don't have the financial resources to complete a mini pupillage, if, for example, you live in an area where there aren't that many chambers around you and you would have to travel somewhere and stay overnight, then you can apply for funding from us as part of the mini pupillage grant scheme. There are some social mobility-based criteria for that, but the details are on our website, so you can take a look. Applications are open all year round. That offers assistance with commuting costs, long distance travel costs, accommodation, and also includes a £100 clothing allowance to buy professional appropriate clothing for your mini pupillage as well. Gray's Inn run university advocacy days for university students. They tend to run these once a term, so keep an eye on the Gray's Inn website to see when those are coming up. You have to apply to participate in those, and it tends to be a month or so before the date it's due to happen. We also include them in our outreach newsletter. Gray's don't have an outreach newsletter, but I tend to put their events in ours. So if you do want to know a little bit more about events that are coming up, you can sign up to our newsletter and you'll be kept informed. Inner Temple have a scheme called PASS, the Pegasus Access Support Scheme. Everything at Inner Temple is Pegasus themed. It's their emblem, so that's why. And this provides a mini pupillage and a summer school for students from less affluent backgrounds. Middle Temple have a similar scheme called the Access to the Bar scheme, which offers 1 week's marshalling and 1 week's mini pupillage. Just a little warning for you. If you do pass, you cannot then apply for access to the bar. But if you've done access to the bar, you can do pass. So apply to access to the bar with Middle Temple first, and then apply to pass afterwards, because if you do it in that order, you can do both. But if you do it the other way around, you can't. So yeah, just a little caveat there for you. If you can gain some experience whilst you're in the build up to your bar course, please do. Mini pupilages are a great way to do this, but we understand that that isn't always possible for everyone. Look into local chambers near to you and whether they are running mini pupillage schemes at the moment. We know that competition is fierce at the moment because a lot of students haven't been able to complete any work experience in the past few years because of COVID. So don't worry too much if you're struggling to get that experience, but don't be frightened to think outside the box as well and try and get some diverse experience on your CV. If you can't get a mini pupillage, approach a barrister and ask if you can shadow them. Send them an email, make it personal, do a bit of research into them, explain why you're approaching them in particular, what kind of work it is that they do that means you're specifically interested in them. Make it clear to them that you've taken the time to write to them specifically, rather than just sending off a form email to umpteen dozen barristers, as you're more likely to get a reply if you do that. Also, don't be too offended if you don't ever get a response. Barristers can be very busy and their timetables tend to be quite erratic. You may catch someone at the perfect time. They've just closed a case. Their clerk hasn't had a chance to put the next pile of work on their desk. They get your email and they think, yeah, I have time to help the next aspiring barrister of the future. Or you might catch them whilst they're in the middle of a 5-year murder trial and they don't have time to even talk to their children, let alone a complete stranger. So don't be offended if you never hear back. Often it's just a case of good luck. Utilize your student societies. If your university has a mooting society, get involved. Mooting is a really, really good experience for moving on to the bar. If they have a debating society, that's another great chance to get some public speaking experience. And also, if you have a law or a bar society, they often run networking events. They have connections with the Inns of Court and specialist bar associations. So look into them, get involved. If your university doesn't have a bar society, think about setting one up, or think about doing a collab with another local university. If you're at a smaller university in, say, Liverpool, maybe approach Liverpool University and ask if they want to collab on something with other law students. Realize your transferable skills. As I said, you don't have to have all law work all the time. You are a fully rounded person and we don't expect you to come to the bar as a little legal robot. Part of the role of the Inns of Court and your bar course provider is teaching you the law. What we cannot teach you, however, is the raw skills you need to be a barrister. So developing your public speaking skills, developing your people skills, developing your advocacy skills, that's something you can be doing now. So think about, you know, maybe if you're a budding thespian, do some amateur dramatics. You know, getting that experience in public speaking is invaluable. Think about writing an essay for a law journal or a university magazine. That'll develop your written skills. Don't think it has to be this very narrow law-related work only. Keeping up to date on legal matters. Reading a few books. Ironically, I haven't kept this bullet point up to date, so there's a few additional books I'd recommend, as well as The Path to Pupillage, The Secret Barrister, and Under the Wig. I'd also recommend People Like Us by Hashi Mohammed, In Black and White by Alexandra Wilson, and Lady Hale has just released her autobiography Spider Woman, which I've been reliably informed is a very good read. I'm sure your university libraries will be able to get hold of a copy if you fancy dipping into that as well.
Lady Hale.
Thank you, Lady Hale.
She wears a spider brooch.
Yes, that'll be why. No one let them know that I got them mixed up. Also, keeping up to date with websites like Legal Cheek is really good. Legal Cheek is a legal news website. It's a bit tongue-in-cheek, a bit fun. So take what they say with a grain of salt, but it is a nice, slightly more enjoyable way to keep your ear to the ground on events. And check out other organizations. There are tons and tons and tons of law-related, barrister-specific organizations out there for you, but often you don't know about them. So don't be afraid to have a little hunt for something that you might not have been aware of before. If you're not based in London, look into which legal circuit you're on and look up the website of that legal circuit. So there's a Northern Circuit, there's a Southeastern Circuit, there's a Wales and Chester Circuit, etc. They will have a website, they may have networking events, they may have circuit-specific events happening, which they would be open to students attending. They will also generally have a list of chambers that are part of that circuit on their website as well. So that can be a really useful way to start looking for chambers that are maybe a little bit closer to you, to start looking for work experience or shadowing as well. And also the specialist bar associations, also called the SBAs. After this event, I will send you a list of those. I think my list is currently 16 pages long, just to give you an idea of how many organizations and opportunities are out there for you to take advantage of. The specialist bar associations tend to fit into two categories. They tend to be either a particular area of work. So the Criminal Bar Association is called CrimBar. No, it's not. It's the Criminal Bar Association. There's ComBar, which is the Commercial Bar Association. Tech Bar, which is the Technology and Media Bar Association, I believe. There's dozens and dozens of them: environment and planning, tax, personal injury, whatever area of law you're interested in, there will probably be a specialist bar association based on that area of law. And so look into whether they have a mentoring program. The commercial bar at the moment is really, really keen to get more women into commercial work. So they are running a mentorship program specifically for women. So if that's something you're interested in and you're a woman, check them out. It may be that you're able to get a mentor for the duration of your studies and your transfer into the bar and your future career. There's also things like essay competitions, mooting competitions. Some chambers run specific competitions just for mooting at that chambers. Again, that's part of the list of opportunities I will send you after the event. So keep your ear to the ground. And a really, really good way to do this as well is utilize social media. If you hate social media, I empathize. I am not the biggest fan of it myself, but it is undeniably very, very useful for you. If you don't have a Twitter account, set up a professional Twitter account, one that you don't have to post anything on, just to follow barristers, chambers, law organizations like the Specialist Bar Associations, organizations like Free Bar, which is an LGBTQ+ network at the bar. There's the Black Barristers Network and Black Women in the Law, which is worth following if you fit into those categories. And there's also things like the Bar Standards Board will post updates and changes to the profession in a wider context. If there's a particularly contentious ruling going down in court, people will be posting about it. The Secret Barrister is constantly posting about issues in the criminal bar, and that's a really good way to keep up to date with what the general consensus is and what's happening on legal Twitter. So do think about setting up just a professional Twitter account to follow them, and also think about using LinkedIn as well. So the Inn's on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. Lots of barristers are on LinkedIn. Some are more active than others, but it can be a good way to keep an eye on opportunities. If mini pupilages open up for applications, when pupillage applications open up as well, it can be a good way to keep an eye on that too. Twitter and LinkedIn can also be a good way of getting an idea of the culture of a particular set of chambers. So it may be that you find that some chambers are doing work that really, really interests you, that are really progressive or really socially active, that do work that you feel you really want to get involved with, not just in court, but outside court and for their members as well. So it can give you an idea of the kind of environment you might end up working in by getting an idea of those barristers and the culture of the chambers that they work in. Yeah. Last but not least, well-being. We know that training for the bar can be stressful. It's quite an uncertain profession, and most barristers will get rejected more than once before they get pupillage. So please, 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 if you're struggling, do not struggle in silence. There are a couple of initiatives out there to help you. The Bar Standards Board has set up wellbeing at the bar. This is a website that lists resources that are available to you. It can give you advice about managing your mental health and well-being. And it also can help give you advice about how to help someone else that you might be worried about. And there's also Law Care. Law Care have a 24-hour hotline, both domestic to the UK and international. If you're struggling for any reason, give Law Care a ring. They can help you out. They are always available. So don't suffer in silence. There is help out there for you if you need it. And if you're worried about someone else, please reach out. We don't want anyone struggling. And that's open for students who are still doing law degrees, pre-law degrees, post-law degrees, bar course, professionals. If in the future you're worried about one of your clerks or your support staff, when you're a paralegal, whatever it is, wellbeing at the bar and Law Care are there to help. So yeah, that brings us to the end of my bit of whittering. Let's see. I managed to keep it relatively close to time, which is good for me. We're now going to take a little 10-minute break just to let people stretch their feet, and then we'll come back and hear from one of our barristers about life at the bar.
Hello, everyone. Just want to introduce myself as well. I'm Clara. I'm Member Engagement Manager at the Inn, and we are delighted to have one of our members here today, Jack Meek. So Jack is a barrister member of the Inn. He was called to the bar in 2013, and he works for the Commercial Law Group. He attended his undergraduate course at Queen's University in Belfast and the bar course at Manchester Metropolitan University. So we're going to ask him some questions today. If anyone from the room has any questions, please raise your hand. Beth is at the back there with the microphone. We'll also be alternating and taking a couple of questions from Zoom as well. So if you are a remote attendee, please pop your question in the Zoom banner. Great. So let's kick off with, if you weren't a barrister, what would you be?
Well, first of all, I could say good afternoon, everyone, and just clarify, it's a commercial law group within the government legal department, just to put that into context. And can I also say that it's really nice to be back. This is the first one of these I've done in person since before the pandemic, and it's really disconcerting not just to see sort of blank screens and initials looking back at me. So thank you for being here, and apologies in advance if you get COVID as a result. The question you asked was actually asked of me at a pupillage interview a number of years ago. And I should clarify, you can find potted histories of me online, because one of the roles I do is a social mobility advocate for the Bar Council. And part of the motivation behind that was because it took me a long time to start pupillage, starting into practice. So as Clara says, I was called to the bar in 2013, but it wasn't until September 2020 that I finally got taken on as a pupil. So sort of long, rocky road. Did lots of interesting stuff in between, but reflecting on it, none of those things I would do if I could sort of have a choice of doing something else. And so I reflect on it. That question was asked of me at a pupillage interview in 2015, and it was just about the time Jeremy Clarkson had lost his contract in Top Gear. And the first question they asked me when I came in the door was, if you couldn't be a barrister, what would you be? And instinctively I said, I hear there's an opening on Top Gear. So I'm sticking with that answer. even though sort of the world of motoring is changing at a fast pace, and that may not be the most politically correct thing for the more environmentally conscious among you, but I still wouldn't mind thrashing sports cars around a test track if I could.
A great answer. Do we have any questions for Jack from the room? Yeah. You just wait for the mic so our remote attendees can hear.
Sorry, so I think earlier you mentioned that after 5 years, if you didn't get pupillage, you wouldn't be able to go on to do that. So could you explain how you had such a long gap and it was okay?
Yeah, so you are correct that the default is that after you do, I believe it's still the case, you 5 years from being called to the bar to, I think, start pupillage. But there are means by which you can get dispensation from the rules. And it's not just the delayed start to pupillage or an extension to that period. There are lots of different things. If you go on to the BSB and you can find there are certain dispensations, there are dispensations depending on your background, and I'm not an expert in this, but you could bypass pupillage, for example, in certain circumstances, if perhaps you had qualified as a solicitor, and we're coming to it later on. For me, I did get dispensation from the traditional pupillage rules because I was able to demonstrate that I had been actively working towards it and had sort of garnered a vast amount of relevant legal experience. And then added to that as well, I did secure the pupillage within the 5 years. It's just the start date was another sort of 2 years from then. So it wasn't like they were taking a punt. I could sort of legitimately say, look, I've actually got pupillage lined up, so like, don't worry about it. And then I've been doing all of this relevant work. I worked most immediately before going into pupillage for Thomson Reuters Practical Law, which some of you may be familiar with, or if you're not familiar with that, you're, I'm sure, familiar with Westlaw, so same umbrella company. So I was on top of law day in, day out. I was reporting on current legal developments. So and I should say as well, if you do find yourself in a situation where you have a dilemma like that, the BSB is actually very approachable. Just lift the phone and people are sort of very willing to sit down and talk with you and help you. And there's no sort of, I didn't feel any pressure from them. And so it was it wasn't something I gave a second thought to after having to do it. So hopefully you don't ever have to sort of get to that point where after 5 years, you're still thinking pupillage isn't forthcoming. But I suppose the other lesson from it is, like, genuinely do not give up if this is something that you want to do and the door just is taking a bit longer to open for you.
Great. We'll take one from the Zoom from Amira, who says, thank you for speaking with us and sharing your experience. Is there a case that has been the most memorable to you and why?
Oh, so, well, what's the person's name? Sorry. Amira, thank you for your question. Because I work for government, I'm going to be a little bit coy, just because I am speaking to you in my personal capacity, and because I am an employed barrister, there's a limit on what I can say. But if I reflect, not necessarily on a specific case, but I've recently started my new rotation in work with the commercial group. But prior to that, I was working for the department which was dealing with post-Brexit, and specifically the Northern Ireland Protocol. And for those eagle-eared, if that's a phrase among you, you might identify that my accent is not from this island, it's from the wee one next door. And so I was delighted to be able to get to do some work on this sort of very significant constitutional issue. Perhaps, if it's not putting too fine a point on it, the most significant constitutional issue since the Good Friday Agreement, which came about whenever I was sort of 9 going on 10. So I was really pleased to get that position with it as part of my government training. I should say, government training, there's a quirk to it where pupillage is 1 year, so you're qualified after year 1, but you do another year's training. So I was with the Northern Ireland Protocol team for 6 months. So sorry if that doesn't answer you the specific question the way you phrased it about a case, but in terms of certainly that having resonance for me personally as well as professionally, I was thrilled to be a part of that.
Great.
I don't know where to look, sorry, for where the cameras for Zoom. So if I
cameras up there. So have we got any questions for Jack in the room? Great. Thank you, Jack. First of all, thank you for the encouragement, because everyone, career advisor I spoke to said, oh, it's very competitive to get a pupillage, and only 40% of people get on, after the bar course. But from what you've told us, it's really encouraging that there's other ways to get to where you want to be. So my next question is really about what's the difference between the employed barrister and are there any different types of barristers, or what about your specialized area? Do you have to choose it very early on in your career? Do you know what you want to do to specialize in, or that something comes afterwards after a few years of practicing? Thank you.
Oh yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, a few things to unpack. So yes, briefly, you've probably what most people think of as the traditional bar route is to go to self-employed bar, so a set of chambers, and presumably, well, the reality is you're drawn to whichever chambers give you pupillage. But like, if you can pick and choose, obviously you're going to be steered towards the chambers that sort of perhaps do specialize in areas in which you're interested. Or if you're not entirely sure, obviously there's lots of common law sets of chambers where you're perhaps doing a bit of everything before you find your feet. And then the other thing that sort of I don't think gets talked about as much is the employed bar, and government is just one part of that. So you will meet other employed barristers, I'm sure, if you come to Lincoln's Inn events, who work as in-house counsel for different companies or for law firms, where they're getting instructions specifically on the cases that that firm is dealing with, and then perhaps going into court. And for me, or for example, if you're budding prosecutors, the Crown Prosecution Service is perhaps one of the more famous examples of where you can do an employed pupillage, and then hopefully have the job lined up afterwards. For me, I genuinely was interested in government, and it was through coming to an event like this whenever I was a student all those years ago that somebody from government was speaking and subsequently interviewed me here for a scholarship, because I then went to Strasbourg and did 3 months in the European Court of Human Rights. I digress a little, but the reason I bring it up is because it was through coming to events like this and speaking to people and actually seeing what options were available. And I thought, oh, that sounds interesting, because I'm fascinated by public law. I'm really interested in politics. Don't want to become a politician because I don't mind having enemies, but I don't want everyone to hate me. So I thought this was a way to marry up the two interests. And then I have had some experience in chambers, because as part of the government's training program, you do get seconded as your second six. So I did go to a commercial chancery set of chambers, Selborne chambers, where I was doing a mix of their work. So I have a little experience that I can speak of to compare directly. I suppose, speaking just about my own experience, because I don't know what it's like training as an employed barrister outside government, the work I think that you get in government is very complex. Very early on, you get a lot of responsibility. Now, you do have good team support around you, but from day one, you are drafting pleadings in your own name. You are perhaps negotiating cases that are going up and being overseen by the Court of Appeal, and then you're building contacts with external counsel, because the government does outsource a lot of its advocacy work. So I should say, if you are interested in coming to government, but you really want to be in court 5 days a week, then you're going to want to think seriously about it, because you're not going to get that in government. But for me, it was the areas that are, perhaps making the news. They're having, a significant impact on the day-to-day lives of people, even though you don't perhaps think about it directly. And then, what I'm doing now is sort of advising policy clients on policy objectives that are set by the government. Civil servants have to find a way to make that work, and we provide the legal answers to help them achieve it legitimately, I suppose, is the best way I can think of summing it up. So I probably digressed from the main point of your question. I mean, in brief, yes, there are employed barristers, self-employed barristers. What I would say is think very carefully about what it is you want to do ultimately, and speaking again in a personal capacity, you get pupillage and you get qualified, then the world is your oyster. You're not confined. It's the same if you're in chambers, and this is not speaking about my intention. I very much believe that sort of come September I will still be in government and enjoying the work that I'm doing there, but the important thing I think at your stage is get pupillage. hopefully get it in somewhere that interests you, get qualified, and then, see what you make of things from there. But the other thing I should say as well, because that may not be a popular sort of thing to say so candidly, is that obviously whenever you're applying for pupillage, the people that are recruiting you are going to be investing time and money into your development, and they are going to be doing that with a view to knowing that you're going to stick around, hopefully, and so you're going to want to factor that into your calculations as well. Hopefully that covers some of the ground that you wanted me to cover.
Great. We've had another one on the Zoom chat as well, so I like this question. Why did you choose Lincoln's Inn?
Oh, see, it's a good job my wife's not here, because the honest answer is I chose Lincoln's Inn because I met a girl at Lincoln's Inn as at a mooting competition long before I knew my wife. I think the thing is with inns, and none of you will mind me saying this, is that ultimately, the inns all provide similar services. I think people have an instinct for one or the other. Some people might choose one because the food is better, or the evening events are better, something like that. I mean, that was the sort of the funny answer, and it was, I suppose, the first. I had come over as part of the Jessup Moot competition whenever I was at university. It was held at Lincoln's Inn and Gray's Inn. I met this person at Lincoln's Inn. Did not end well. That relationship actually fell apart because I decided to pursue a career at the bar. But then sort of looking at it deeper, I do think I don't work for the inn, so I can say all the nice things I do. I want to about it. It is the biggest. The support on hand is terrific. They're very generous. With their time, and for somebody like me who did struggle for a long time to get pupillage, I knew that sort of Clara, and this before your time, perhaps Anna, and perhaps before your time as well, Beth, but sort of everyone in the end was always just fighting my corner, and sort of talking me up whenever I wasn't perhaps doing it myself. Not that I'm that backwards and coming forwards, but yeah, I think it's an instinctive thing, and you sort of come to events like these, you get a feel for them, and I do genuinely. I've never regretted choosing this inn, and there are the cynical things too. I think it's had the most sort of Supreme Court judges, most prime ministers, things like that. So it's nice to sort of be considered to fall within such esteemed company, but yeah, it doesn't really make a difference, but join Lincoln's Inn.
Can I follow that up with, how has the inn helped you since you became a member?
Yeah, absolutely. So well, I suppose there's a number of different things I could talk about. I alluded briefly to the fact that I got a scholarship from this inn to go and work for 3 months at the European Court of Human Rights. That was before it was back in 2015, and the inn sort of clearly saw that I did have an interest in that subject, because I suppose human rights is one of those areas where it's very easy to say that you're interested in something whenever you're clued in and it's happening all the time, but it's very difficult to get experience in it. And sort of Lincoln's Inn clearly saw that I genuinely was interested and could bring something to that, and then sort of come back and speak about it. So, in terms of the most direct benefit, I got a financial award to go and do that. But even other things that, struggling for pupillage, the inn runs a terrific mentorship scheme, whereby if you have unsuccessfully applied for pupillage in at least one cycle, you can apply to be part of the scheme. You'll be partnered up with a formal mentor and go through quite a rigorous workshopping program, and I'm now on that program as a mentor. There are other things within the inn that I suppose I sort of came to sort of post, so I haven't been as active this year because it's moved back to in person. I no longer live in London, but I judge mooting competitions here, and mooting workshops, debating. I have done in the past at the inn, and then sort of other more informal arrangements where you can be partnered up with a sponsor. So I have somebody who's currently on the bar course who was partnered up with me in September as sort of an informal mentee. There's somebody else who has been directed to me by the Inn to sort of do application workshops for her, sort of pupillage applications, things like that. So there's a lot of support like that that's available, and I was able to take advantage of some of that whenever I was a student as well. You know, the residential weekends, I believe all of the Inns do this, but I was lucky to get on a residential weekend whenever I was a bar student, where you go out to sort of country estate for a weekend. You do a number of different workshops, advocacy exercises, and you get to network. And for somebody like me who, you know, not from here, didn't know anyone really at the bar, I knew one barrister from my hometown who came over here to practice in Manchester, and that was my first sort of mini pupillage experience. But I didn't really have any formal connection to the bar. And I think the thing is too that you don't perhaps realize until you come over, and actually barristers, and not, you know, I'm not necessarily including me in this, but the other people that you meet and you'll see at the events that you come to at the Inn time and again, you'll see the same faces show up, and it is because we are genuinely interested in helping, you know, the next generation, which makes me sound terribly old as a millennial. You'll see there is a genuine interest in helping students and fostering the best of what is to come with the bar. So hopefully that covers.
Yeah,
ground.
brilliant. Do we have any more in the room? Great.
Hi, Jack. Thanks for sharing. So this is more like a broad question, but what are some of the key characteristics that are essential in the commercial bar?
Oh, a commercial bar. Oh, I feel like it's a pupillage interview now. So what do I tell students? Well, no, I think first and foremost, and probably for the commercial bar specifically, you're going to need, you know, good intellect, and that might sound self-evident. And, you know, obviously, if you're considering the bar, you've clearly got something by way of good intellect, but you need to be able to analyze complex problems, and you need to be able to provide practical solutions. And then I suppose that brings me to the second point, which is not just intellect, but then clarity of thought and being able to communicate that. So barristers, and you probably getting this from me, quite like the sound of our own voices, also like that reflected on paper, but there is a skill in being able to self-edit and being able to, you know, present a case in a logical, structured way, which communicates the key points, but does so substantively. And the easier you are to follow. And if you can break down those sort of complex ideas and give practical solution, I think that you're, you know, one step ahead. And that spins into communication skills more generally. I haven't mentioned advocacy because you sort of, again, presumably there's a lot of you in here thinking you want to come to the bar because you want to advocate in court. One of the other things, so what I would like to focus on instead, and not just for the commercial bar, but for anything, is empathy, and actually just being able to put yourself in the shoes of somebody else. And perhaps in the commercial aspect, it's, well, I think sometimes whenever you think of the commercial bar, you're thinking, you know, big corporations fighting it out. But for some of the commercial work, for example, I would have been doing, it might have been a small business owner who was having a dispute with somebody. And so empathy, I think, does feed across into everything you do, because, you know, thinking about the job more generally, you might have people coming to you that are at the lowest point of their lives, and they need somebody to represent them to the best of their ability. And so being able to relate to them, I think, is a valuable attribute that you should have at the bar more generally, but also at the commercial bar. I should say that obviously my general area of expertise is public law. I work for the government. It's the commercial law is one aspect within that. So I'm not going to sort of pretend that I'm some overall expert at the commercial bar. You know, other people can speak more to that, but hopefully that gives you some idea as to what I think anyway.
Great. We've had another from Zoom. So what advice would you give to people considering studying the bar course?
The bar course, I think, is one of those things where there's a lot of work to do in a very short space of time, but I don't think it's any more difficult, and perhaps in some ways it's slightly, I don't want to use the word easier because that's not necessarily the case, but it's not perhaps as academically rigorous as studying something academically. You need to you will be starting to look at things in a different way. Pardon me. So you need to look at things from a practical point of view. And it's, very much about learning the skills in drafting and in advocacy and relating to clients and your conferencing skills, things like that. So yeah, just in short, be prepared to to have to fit a lot in to a very short space of time. What I would also say as well, that whenever it comes to the bar courses, take advantage of your come to the qualifying sessions, not just because you need to, but because there's a lot of really good stuff on offer, and you can start to network. And that actually go back to your question, Sarah, at the top about the commercial bar, commercial awareness, understanding the profession. And you're not going to be able to do that unless you are speaking with barristers and coming to events and actually understanding what it's like to practice at the bar. So yeah,
great answer. Have we got any more from the room? Oh, lots of questions.
Thank you for taking my question. So it's a kind of a two-part question, which I think kind of relates to the previous one. First of all, what do you think was the most challenging part of, coming to the bar and then getting a pupillage? But also, when do you think you made a sense of the law in more practical sense? Because, for example, I'm in law school right now, and it all seems a bit abstract at the moment. So I guess it's very different to see that in practice and have a way of thinking that is more, like dedicated to specific scenario, let's say, rather than just, a generalized question. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Like on the second part, it's quite difficult to actually really get a sense of it until you're dealing with real cases, because you're sort of, whenever you're at this stage, they're just like characters on a page from a book. But sometimes actually I think that helps, even whenever you're dealing with things in real life. It's almost to treat it like a game. These are the characters, this is the setup, these are the facts. Now make what you will. But yeah, I think I don't know if there's one sort of crystallizing point in which it sort of that clicked for me. It was more, okay, here's a case. And you actually realize, oh, there are actually real people involved here, and what I will do or not do will have a consequence for these people. But yeah, it's difficult to sort of think of one clarifying point. Remind me the first part of your question. Oh, the most challenging. Again, it's not that I'm trying to avoid the question, because I don't think that there's one part that I can identify, but looking at it in the round, it took 6 years of applications, perhaps 100 or so written applications, perhaps a score of interviews. And then just, it gets to a point where you're putting the work in. And that's not to say that there are obviously very good people that are getting taken on ahead of you, but you do start to ask yourself questions like, is there something that is simply beyond my control now? It doesn't matter what I do, this perhaps will never happen for me. And I think a lot of you are probably in the position where you have succeeded in everything else you've done to get to this point, if you're considering going for the bar, and then all of a sudden it is true that for the first time in your life you might fail at something. And that can come as quite a surprise whenever you're not used to failing at something. And for me, I don't come from a traditional background. I very much appreciate it. Sort of look at me, I'm a sort of straight white British male sitting here. I tick all of the sort of majority boxes, but my family didn't have an awful lot. And this is not, oh, let's play the world's smallest violin. I had a very loving and supportive family, and I'm not trying to be a victim or anything like that. But whenever you don't have that financial backing and that financial safety net, and you're constantly taking a risk, just hoping and praying that it will pay off, that you sort of have to just put that to one side and really keep focused on what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So and you have to constantly fight off, those sort of the little voice in the back of your head that's, sort of saying, give up, don't do this. What's the point? You will hear lots of people at the bar speak about imposter syndrome to the extent that everyone says it and it just becomes a cliche, but there's a reason things become a cliche. There's something behind it. At every point, all of us, not everyone might admit it, but at every point you will be thinking, it's like, I have no idea what I'm doing. But I think what becomes what is quite reassuring is, it's not reassuring if the clients know this, but what's quite reassuring is knowing that every other person feels that way. And then you sort of realize it's like, it's not that I'm not getting help here because they don't want to, it's because they don't have a clue either. And so, but that's part of the job. And, a very useful lesson I learned in my 6 months in chambers was ultimately people are coming to you because they don't know the answer. So you need to go away and find the answer and give the advice based upon what you find. And my supervisor was very much one where, here's the file as it's come in from the solicitor, off you go, and sort of no more than that. And it was really disconcerting at first, especially having worked in government where, yes, it was very challenging in government in a different way, but you were always part of a team, whereas the bar itself can be quite a lonely profession, if you let it be. But then that's also perhaps the appeal of it for many people, is the independence. I'm saying that obviously as somebody who's at the employed bar. So yeah, number of different things in there. Hopefully that goes somewhere to what you were wanting to explore.
And why did you decide to become a barrister?
Oh, I hate that. This is the question. I don't know if any of you at this point have applied for pupillage. Or if you look up any pupillage forms, it's inevitably the first question on the form. Why do you want to be a barrister? And after 6 years, you're thinking, is it not bloody well obvious why I want to be a barrister? It's, and it's not even just that. It's like, even if I don't want to, I'm in too deep now. So I have to keep going. What I would say to that question is be honest. I mean, be honest in everything, in all of your dealings, whenever it comes to the bar. But I was sort of coming where I come from, and there's sort of like this code of omerta where there's a reason why basically the catchphrase of Northern Ireland is say nothing. And so you don't like to give too much of yourself. And therefore, I think my answer to that question had always just been really bland, because it was just, oh, well, these are the skills I think you need. And I think I have these skills, and that's why I want to be a barrister. But that's not the question, because you will get asked the question later on, what skills do you have and why do you think they will help you in a career at the bar? I find that I'm able to answer that question much better now that I've entered practice, because I can reflect honestly. So my story, for want of a better phrase than that hackneyed one, is, based upon the fact that, coming from where I come from, growing up at the tail end of, and then in the aftermath of the Troubles, where you are sort of, if you're in any way educated or your politics are in any way moderate back home, you're very wary about what you say in public, because you might offend somebody who is considered the other side. And for me, who came out of the womb arguing about stuff, it really bothered me that I had to watch. Like, it would really bother me whenever my parents would say, just watch what you say whenever we're out, because it's like, well, why should that be the case? And then, and it's not to say that I've ever consciously thought about that at the application process, but then it's feeding into all of my personal experience and how that's informed my view on life and view to things. And the other specific example I give is that my grandmother was a prison officer during the Troubles in Northern Ireland, and you would expect, therefore, her politics to have been, sort of very uncompromising, and there would be people, that I would know who are like that. But she wasn't. Whenever she spoke about IRA prisoners, for example, who were under her stewardship in prison, she always just spoke of them as if they were anybody else, ordinary people. She was telling us stories about IRA prisoners who were requesting extra toilet roll just so they could write poems in their cell and stuff like that. And I suppose subconsciously just realizing that everybody has a point of view. I mean, arguably, whenever it comes to things like that, you can say, well, you don't think somebody's point of view is legitimate, but at the same time, everyone has an argument, and it's your job to treat them as people and to see all sides and to be the sort of objective arbiter. And so those, I think, informed my outlook on life, because in as much as you can be coming from Northern Ireland, I do think that I am moderate in my political outlook and other things. And then that just sort of feeds in wanting actually to speak out on behalf, perhaps, of those who are unable to do so, or identifying that there is something that you can do for the benefit of others. But as I said, a lot of the time, whenever that question came up, I didn't like to answer it that way, because it seemed to me as like I'm being too personal here. And, you know, somebody's just going to be saying, oh, well, there's no substance to that. But actually it's, you know, for me, it was finding the courage then to get over that sort of, you know, restraint in myself to start speaking about that more now, and to start speaking about it now in the context of social mobility and all of these other things. So very long-winded way
Very
of
interesting
answering why I want to be a barrister.
No, it was very interesting. Take one more from the room. Great.
Hi.
Hiya.
Sorry, I have a cold, not COVID. I
Oh, don't worry.
promise.
I'm far enough away. I feel for your colleague in front of you.
I feel like you have to announce that nowadays. Can you sort of mention that in your current role, you don't go to court, you're not in court 5 days a week. So could you tell us like what your average day looks like?
Yeah, well, I suppose every barrister will tell you there's not an average day, I suppose, but and the work changes. So within government, there's sort of a distinction between litigation, contentious work, and then advisory, non-contentious work. And at the moment, I work for an advisory department, so I'm co-located within a government department. At the moment, it's a lot of contracts and government contracts and procurement, that sort of stuff within the context of what I was doing on the post-Brexit stuff in Northern Ireland. It was you know, dealing with any of the things that were coming out of the issues that had been identified, and pardon me, certain negotiations and things that were ongoing, you know, researching discrete points about, you know, perhaps somebody wanted to understand the implications of proposed legislation, something like that. So I would, you know, be looking in and doing research, or, you know, drawing up a memorandum and identifying things, providing support for certain cases that were appearing in courts as well. Within the litigation sphere, very much drafting defenses to claims that are being brought in judicial review claims against the government, and anything, lots of stuff related to that, as I say, you know, perhaps entering into negotiation with people as well. And then whenever I was doing pupillage in my second section, if you are working within the litigation sphere, there are opportunities to go to court. It's just they are few and far between, and you can only take instruction from GLD because you're employed by them, and you're obviously a representative of the Crown in that context. So I did appear on a couple of occasions in the upper tribunal, arguing against permission to appeal hearings or claims. So yeah, but government is such a huge place, and you know, really, even with all of that, I'll have only scratched the surface of the different things that are available to do. One of the things that sort of on the Northern Ireland stuff, it was within the Cabinet Office, which is quite an unusual place because it's not a government department like others. It's the way I sort of think about it is like an octopus that sits at the sort of center of government, sort of has tentacles reaching in different places. So you would have seen a lot of work come through, and then you would be coordinating with other government departments on the substantive issues that affected them. So perhaps there was an agricultural issue, so you would get involved with DEFRA and stuff like that. Or if there were trade aspects, you might consult the Department for International Trade. But I think within government, there are certainly as many opportunities as there are, you know, areas of interest. So, and you do to some extent get to shape what it is you want to do, because you can state a preference whenever sort of moves are coming up.
Great. Have we got another one from the room? I know I saw, yeah, some more hands.
Hiya, thanks, Jack. You answered the first part of my question, which is when you talked about sort of how dispiriting it could be to be waiting for that pupillage. The second part I was going to ask was, did you find the support from Lincoln really helped you through that time?
I think yes. I always sort of feared like people are just going to get sick of seeing me because I, sort of was coming to all of the events. But I think the Inn, as with anything, you get out of it what you will put in. Again, sort of, you might realize I'm speaking a lot of cliches this evening, but again, there's a reason for that. And I know that I could come and I had, these folks, cheering me on. The Pupillage Foundation scheme was definitely a big help. The scholarship and the opportunities that opened up as well, just because I think, for example, having worked in Strasbourg, and then whenever I was a practical law, I was working on dispute resolution, arbitration, and Brexit. But whenever I came to interview for government, I could actually point to specific practical things and say, right, you work, or some of your work is based in these areas, and I have this practical experience which was afforded me by these different bits and pieces. And I suppose more generally as well, and I'm going to have to caveat this in a second, but if you don't ask, you don't get. And the reason I have to caveat that is because I work with government. Sadly, I'm not in a position to offer any of you work experience. But that is part of the other part of the reason I like coming and speaking is like I will do what I can, in giving my own thoughts, guidance, advice, whatever way you want to think about it, sort of either at this or on a one-to-one level. But just sadly, because I'm not self-employed, I can't say, come along to court with me. But the other thing I know, for example, if you were to secure a position, and presumably the Inn won't mind me saying this, but if so, I got a scholarship specifically to go to the European Court of Human Rights. There's a friend of mine out there who is a member of this Inn, didn't get the scholarship to go, but secured a place at the court by himself. Then came to the Inn, said, I secured this place. Any chance you could kick me a bit of money? And I think the Inn funded him. He just wasn't using the sort of, scholar thing. Maybe you don't want that sort of widely published. But, I think always just, as I said, honesty, just have the conversations with people and tell them where you stand, how things are going. And you might be surprised as to who you might get put in touch with, or, you should do make use of the resources that are available.
We got any more from the room? A few more questions.
The gentleman at the end of this row.
Thank you for taking my question. My name is Mohammed. So my question was for someone who's about to throw themselves in the battlefield to apply for pupillages and can potentially look to a long period of applications. What kind of jobs or stepping jobs would you recommend me to do so I don't lose the touch? And it's not like I'm working in a restaurant and in 2 years I still don't have a pupillage.
Yeah, no, thanks, Mohammed. Yeah, well, I think there's a number of different things. Obviously, paralegal is the first one that I would suggest. I did do a stint as a paralegal, and it's useful just to sort of, I do think it's useful to understand how the solicitor's profession works as well. And sort of going back to what I was saying earlier, and just to show that I don't just throw all this together, but about commercial awareness and actually understanding the law as a profession, but then the bar specifically as a profession, realizing that barristers aren't anything without solicitors and people that instruct them. So I do think it's useful, and you will find, I think as well, that a lot of places understand that if you are going for the bar, or if you were going for a training contract as a solicitor, that you don't necessarily want to be a paralegal for life, and people appreciate that and are willing to give opportunities to get your foot on the ladder, and so that you can build up experience. I mean, I can speak about the things that I have done because it's all I know, I suppose. But I worked, as I said, for Thomson Reuters Practical Law, so that was as an assistant editor. So I was, drafting practical guidance notes for use by people in the legal profession. as well as sort of managing blog services, commissioning articles and things like that from people in practice, both at the bar and in the solicitor's profession, as well as being able to draft some stuff. And then it's also really good at just keeping you up to date with your current awareness of what's going on in whichever area of law you might be working in, or that you're interested in. This one I always hesitate, because every time I mention this, then people want to ask me about it. So I should say, because this is an event specifically about the bar in England and Wales, we can speak about this another time, but I'm also New York bar qualified. So I did that after bar school here. I did a course and sat the New York bar in the February following that, and then got paperwork's a nightmare, so I got called to the New York bar in 2016. And then my thinking behind that was, well, not the string to the bow, but also sort of with sort of the world becoming a smaller place, more globalized place, and sort of give me opportunities to work in specific areas of law. Had I chosen to go in, for example, to an international law firm as counsel or something like that. I'm not saying everyone go and do the New York bar. We need barristers in this country. So those are the types of things that I had done. What I would say more generally is, obviously many pupilages are always useful. I know you're speaking about employment and actually, getting on the road that way, but in terms of, showing your commitment to the bar, it's useful to do many pupilages, and you don't need to go overboard, just sort of enough to show that you have thought about this seriously, and yes, this is something for you. And I would suggest you maybe do them in a few different areas to see what works for you, what doesn't work for you, because it can almost be as useful learning what you really don't like as learning what you do. And I know students, and I feel for students who have had to, it's been all right for me working from home. I did my pupillage, basically entirely from home, and that's all right whenever you're sort of 33 and you've been able to sort of finally get on the property ladder. But it's, it must have been really disheartening for students who were, paying these massive course fees and not actually able to enjoy the other advantages of university life. But one of the questions, therefore, I get asked a lot of online events is, how do I get work experience if everyone's working remotely? And again, that commercial awareness thing is, okay, a mini pupillage or a training vacation scheme online may not be the same as going in person, but at least you're showing your interest, and at least you're understanding how the professions have adapted to these strange times in which we live. So anything like that, it's always going to be useful. It's always going to give you some sort of insight. But I think that there are any number of different jobs you can do. And I would say, like, if you're, I don't know what stage you're at, Mohammed, if you're on the bar course or if you're looking towards the bar course, but, once you complete that, I would be surprised if you don't find something within the legal sector to gain employed work experience in the meantime. And there are other things like LPC law, I think is the name, if it still goes by that, the county court advocacy, where you can take your own sort of instructions on a limited basis to go into court and advocate on sort of smaller matters which don't require full rights of audience. And any advocacy experience always looks good on a pupillage application form.
Brilliant. I could see a couple more hands, so I don't know if there's any. 2 more.
Thank you for coming, Jack, and giving us some good insight. I was just wondering because you specialize in commercial, if you wanted to change, could you change to any other area of law? So if you wanted to go to family, for example, can you do that at any point?
Well, so I should say that within government, the idea sort of in government is that you do move around quite a bit so that you can sort of become, my name's Jack, but you become a jack of all trades. But there are other options to specialize as well. It's difficult to say because I can only speak from my own experience, but I think it comes down to sort of the unsaid thing: get pupillage wherever you can get it.
So once you've got the bar, you can practice any area of law, really?
Presumably you'll have to be able to persuade people that you're but that's one of the key skills, your question, being able to persuade people and argue your point. For example, I would have thought that if you worked within government for perhaps you were doing stuff in education or things that had an impact on children, and then you can maybe sort of be able to speak to a specific interest within family law. But I think the key thing is getting pupillage sorted, and then you'll be able to move. I mean, I know a good friend of mine who got called to the bar the same year that I did. She started off in criminal law and worked in that for a number of years before then moving chambers. And I think she now does quite a lot of sort of family work and regulatory work. So it's certainly possible, but that's just anecdotal. I think the important thing is I'll keep stressing, get qualified. Hopefully you'll get qualified in the area that you're interested in.
Do everything. So.
Yeah. And that's you maybe want to look at common law sets, for example. So generally you're doing sort of family crime and civil, and you'll get some experience in all of that, and then you can choose to specialize. But there are certainly options out there.
And I think there was a second question.
Hi, thank you. Sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, how would you go about marshalling opportunities if you're not a member of an inn yet? Because I applied for one and they said that they're only going through proper routes, and basically, yeah.
Okay, so I should say in sort of the long list of things that I have done, marshalling isn't one of them. But yeah, I think straightforward answer is the one you don't want to hear, joining in and sort of sign up the marshalling program. However, I'm sure there are other organizations. Is it Bridging the Bar? If you've heard of Bridging the Bar, which was set up by somebody who used to work at GLD and has since gone to Chambers. I think they do. You maybe know? You've heard of Bridging the Bar? I think they do. Yeah, they sort of partner, aspiring barristers up with. I know they did some perhaps something with judicial assistants and that sort of thing, are going in for some experience. So. Yeah, it's maybe not the best thing to say. Just sort of keep looking. The simplest thing is, join an inn, and I'm not going to put you on the spot by asking, why haven't you joined an inn? Because I know that there is calculation that goes into that and which one you want to join. But as I said earlier, join Lincoln's Inn, but it doesn't really matter. But that might actually factor into your decision if you're wanting to join an inn of court. Look at what opportunities there might be for sort of marshalling if that's important to you, and it could be. I know that the inn does run a marshalling scheme, doesn't it?
We do, yeah.
So yeah.
I'm not totally certain about this, but I do believe that the Association of Women Judges might run a marshalling scheme as well. So it'd be worth looking them up.
And one final question from me. Hopefully ending on a high. What is the best part of being a barrister?
Oh, so I can't say money because I'm on a government salary. What I do find really rewarding is whenever you get some abstract question and nobody else knows the answer to it, and you go away and you sort of come up with the right formulation of search terms, and then you find it, you find the obscure point in a footnote in a textbook that nobody's looked at, and then you're able to sort of write your opinion. It's this is what the answer is, and then whenever you get the feedback, it's that's exactly what I was looking for. I don't know how you find that. That is really rewarding. And if I may sort of, I'll draw on something that I didn't know until I was leaving Chambers, but there was I'd been asked to look at a specific issue, and again, as I said, my supervisor was generally of the view that I should learn by doing. So it was, here are the papers, this is the question, let's see what you come up with. I came back and said, this is the approach I think you should take. What he hadn't told me was he had already spoken to a QC in Chambers who had given a completely different view. And whenever he then looked at what I had provided and then sort of went away and thought about how to apply it practically, he opted for my advice over the senior member in chambers. And I had no idea about this until it came to my sort of final review before I was going back into government. But that was quite a nice feeling. It's like, because, you know, touching on that imposter syndrome thing again, you will always question like, am I doing the right thing? Am I asking the right questions? And every once in a while you'll get something like that. And it's like, no, actually, I have as much right to be doing this job as anybody else. And that sort of shows that I can do it. And that's what I would say to all of you as well. Don't think that you can't do this job. Use your experiences to inform how you want to go forward. And don't be fazed by all of the background noise. And somebody mentioned sort of like statistics and things earlier on. I mean, you can have a healthy respect for them, but ultimately you're competing against yourself. Sorry, another cliche, I know. But I always sort of figured that, you know, it's background noise. Only you know if this is something that you want to do. If it is, it doesn't matter. If you know, people may try and put you off, but you know, I say, you know, just stick at it anyway. And therefore, if I were to leave you with 3 pieces of advice, the first one is don't give up. I hope that if you take anything away from listening to me, it is that you can eventually make it, even if it takes a while. The second thing I would say, Mohammed, perhaps in reference to your question about jobs and things like that, is to take every opportunity that comes your way. So you don't know how useful something might be, so you keep an open mind about things. Or even if sorry, I didn't know your name, but you know, something you want to do family law, but something comes up, you know, take the opportunity and then see, you know, what comes of it. And then finally as well, to end perhaps a lighter note, is to have a hinterland. You know, sort of have other interests that keep you sane and keep you level-headed and keep you focused. I sort of joke whenever I come to the inn, because I'm just this poor kid from a traditionally troubled part of Northern Ireland, that I come in, I see all these sort of the pomp and circumstance, and like, it's all a bit of a laugh, isn't it? You know, you sort of come in and it's like it's great, you see, and to feel part of the tradition that goes back centuries, but also just keeping a sense of perspective as well. It's very easy for me to sit here now that I am qualified and say, you know, the bar isn't everything. It's a fantastic job. I'm really pleased to be a part of it, but there are other important things in life as well. And the bar for me is, you know, it fits into sort of the round, and the other things. There's one thing, I can't remember the exact quote, but Stephen Fry had come up with some brilliant formulation where he was talking about, you know, he is not an actor or a writer. He is not a noun. He is a person who writes or acts. He is a person that does things. And therefore, there's any number of things you could say about me. It's not that I'm a barrister, but I'm a husband, I'm a son, I'm, you know, a brother, you know, I'm a Formula One fan, I'm a movie obsessive, you know, I'm a theater enthusiast, I'm an avid reader. Point is, if anyone now asks me, you know, what are you or what do you do, I will now respond, well, I do barristering. That is my job, and I am privileged to have that as my job, but it's part of the reason I have it is to enable me to enjoy the other things about life as well. So whenever you do find, and I'm sure there will be challenges ahead, you know, keep in mind, you know, keep a sense of perspective, and I think that will help sort of keep you grounded so that you can focus and hopefully, you know, get your own success in this profession, because it is a worthwhile one.
Thank you. And just one final thing to say is thank you all for coming, both remotely and online, and a huge thank you to Jack for some very inspiring words. I'm sure you will appreciate that.